Have you ever gotten one of those forwarded emails from one of your relatives and they're like, no, this is a true story. Check it out. Just read this below. And it's like a story of, I don't know, an atheist professor and a Christian student who totally like out-logicked that professor. And you're reading it and you're like, this isn't true. This never happened. And it's so easy to debunk. All you got to do is go to Snopes and type in some keywords and you're like, look, here's where the story comes from. I know it's not real. I can prove it's not real. And you can even, I always send Ben back an email like, hey, everything you just sent me is a lie. Here's the evidence, here's a link to Snopes or something. And it's like, yeah, you know it's a lie. But your relatives who sent it to you think it's real. And you're like, why would anyone fall for that? How could they be so gullible? That's what the Creation Museum is like for me. That's how I think of the Creation Museum. I can't believe people take it seriously. It's not a threat if you know how to separate fact from fiction. The problem is we live in a society where there's just a whole lot of gullible people who don't know how to do that. And what I'm worried about is that what I take as a joke, they're going to take very seriously, even though the whole museum is so easy to debunk. I've actually been to the Creation Museum in Kentucky twice. I was there on opening day when it opened years ago because I was protesting the fact that they were calling it a museum, because it's not. And I actually went back there another time a couple years later. So I've been inside this place. I saw how their exhibits worked. I saw the way they were trying to really preach Christianity. That's what it's about. It's not about promoting science. But here's what they do, and this is why the Creation Museum could be threatening, which is that they have the look and feel of a science museum, even though they're not. They put on the mask of science, which means they have exhibits that look like exhibits you would see at a real science museum, even though those exhibits don't really share any science with you. They quote the Bible. That's not how science works. The Answers in Genesis, the group that runs the Creation Museum, they have some PhDs on their staff, which they say, like, look, we're credible. We have actual doctors on our staff. But guess what? Those doctors are not putting out any research articles. They're not doing research. They're not publishing any papers in peer-reviewed journals. This is not what scientists, normal scientists do that stuff. They're not doing that stuff. They will say, look, we have a journal. Like, they put out what they call a peer-reviewed journal. But you know what those articles in there are like? It's like, these are the frogs that were on Noah's Ark. Or this is how perfect God's creation was. Like, those are actual articles in the current issue. Like, this is not how a science journal operates. So they have this look and the feel of science museums, which is why a lot of people, a lot of Christians, will go to that museum and they're like, oh, this is real science. I don't know why the Natural History Museum in the big city I live in doesn't have these exhibits. Well, because they care about actual science and anthropology, and they're doing the work that you need to do at a museum. The Creation Museum doesn't do any of that. They just spend the money to make it look credible and then spew a lot of lies. This is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the fact that children especially are being taken to museums like this. And by the way, the Creation Museum in Kentucky is the big one with all the money, but there are other ones in California, in other states as well. Kids are being taken to these museums and they're being told, look, this is a museum. This is teaching you what those other museums won't teach you because they're afraid of the truth. It's like, no, they're just teaching you what the Bible says, and it's not true. And what worries me too, the Answers in Genesis puts out textbooks like real scientists do. And they say, look, these textbooks say the Bible says it's true, so it is. Again, it's not how science works. So that's what really bothers me about the Creation Museum. Like I said, it's not threatening for me. It's not threatening to anyone who actually understands how science works. It's not threatening to anyone who knows that the Bible isn't a history book or a science book. But a lot of people don't have that knowledge. Half of the country accepts young earth creationism. They believe we were created as is by the hand of God under 10,000 years ago. Those people are falling for this. Those people are taking their kids to the museum and trying to brainwash them into buying it. That I'm legitimately afraid of. Look, science is about questioning and saying, oh, that's the way people say things are, but I don't know if I believe that, so I'm going to run some experiments and I'm going to test that idea to see if it's true or not. The Creation Museum is not about questioning. It's about accepting what they tell you as truth and their truth is coming from the Bible. Again, that's not how science works. That's not even how a good museum works. Science is all about questioning. Creation museum's about accepting and not questioning because the Bible said so. You know, I basically give the Creation Museum the same amount of respect I give Fox News, which is that it has the look and feel of something that should be real. You know, they have the anchors, they have the graphics and everything. But then when you stop and think about what they're saying and you really take a closer look at what they're doing, you realize this is all a lie. This is all bullshit. Why are they how could anyone fall for this? And the sad truth is way too many people fall for it. So the onus is on us to kind of help people be less ignorant and teach them how to separate fact from fiction. My name is Hemant Mehta, and I write for friendlyatheist.com. Please leave your questions and comments below, and we will check them out.